You guys have Mr. Green over on Twitter to thank for this video, who bought this figure for himself and found that he hated it so much he'd rather throw it away than keep it, thus deciding to send it my way. I hope I can make you feel like the money you wasted on this was well spent by the end of the video. And once again, please don't offer me stuff like this. It's hard not to take it, and I don't like depriving you guys of your stuff. I only accept it here because he wanted to be rid of this thing in the worst way. But the more I accept these, the more people will offer. And I know I shouldn't feel guilty about accepting gifts you guys want to give, but damn it, I do. And before we start, just thank you to Mr. Green. Your help is so very appreciated. Not much else to talk about first, so let's cover Beast War's obvious Starscream stand-in, Golden Disc Terrorsaur. Real quick, his box. Boring. Ugly. Might as well be the brown of the Gen Selects packages. Hasbro is failing on presentation here, and it is only the first of many failures with this one. The robot mode here looks much better than the initial pictures of him suggested. I was kind of taken aback by just how much I didn't hate this thing when I finally saw it in person, considering just how terrible that stock photography looked. I can say that I finally understand why all the product shots of this were transformed wrong, because even when it's right, it still looks wrong, with the backpack actually sticking up over his head. And while the red plastic here is in fact a lot better than it looked in pictures, being both richer and darker, more matching the character than it looked like it was going to, the fact that all the red is the same sucks the head into the backpack, making it hard to tell where the kibble ends and the head begins. One of the nice things I can say about this is that the silver paint is nice and vibrant, adding a much needed level of pop to this sculpt. Photographs of this also made the paint look a lot duller, so the colors were actually a very nice surprise in general. They do look good and mostly like him. It's not extremely boring on the eyes like I expected. The dots on his chest really help to give life to that part, and there is at least a fair breakup of the sculpt through the use of the silver. But if you were buying this on Amazon for those eye-watering prices, you would really hope for tons more paint than this, and it's really not any more than a decently covered Kingdom figure, especially considering the fact that he's primarily the wrong color. Terrorsaur's robot mode was easily as silver and gunmetal as it was red, and they've got his needs completely wrong as the crest is supposed to be red with an underline of silver. Now technically that's all not bad, just inaccurate. It's just that there are clear problems in the look of this thing that are a result stemming from its nature as a retool. But the sculpt is where this really starts falling down. Like, even from a distance, there's this weird gap at the base of the neck past where his collarbone should be. It's technically mistransformed like this by having his head too far back, but the problem is that it's not too far back. It's exactly as far back as it should be, because if you have it where it's supposed to go, Terrorsaur is staring into the ground. So if you have it back, it looks bad, and if you have it down, it looks dumb. But then you get to the sculpt in general, where it's clearly designed for a different, much slighter figure because Terrorsaur has really let his gains waste away. This boy used to be jacked in the show, but not anymore. He seems to be compensating for that by stuffing a couple socks into his tidy whities, because Terrorsaur be rocking that big dick energy in the most uncomfortable way possible. This is a real awkward flaw of the sculpt that stems from it being a retool. With the chest sucking in like this, the crotch plate becomes really prominent. Somehow, it's actually less noticeable from the side, but from the front, the crotch is obviously the part of this figure that's closest to you. Also, weirdly enough, he's got his Predacon symbol painted on the inside of his right elbow, which isn't even 1% where that belongs. And then the backpack is just a complete catastrophe. It's huge, bigger than Airrazor's in just about every way, which makes sense because basically his entire alt mode is hanging off there. Airrazor had the decency to stick some of that in her chest, but this asshole just left it all dangling. Of note, the wings are a little improved here, as they are no longer pinned in their fragile joint, allowing them to separate before actually damaging them. I've heard reports that other people have had problems with the wings popping off at these joints, but I can't say that mine seem to suffer from that same issue. So that appears to be an inconsistent QC thing. What I can say I've heard other people having a problem with, and is present on mine, is the ankles. These are absurdly loose. They can hold a pose if you're careful with them, as they have exactly enough traction to work if you give them a moment to settle after setting it down before letting it go, but they are a massive frustration, and it makes the figure so very unfun to pose, which is kneecapping one of the best features that are granted to it by its parent mold. And then you get to the head, and it's not terrible, but it's also not doing a good job. Like, this isn't a disaster like the Kingdom Rhinox head sculpt where it's both inaccurate and hideous, but it's definitely not accurate, and it looks kind of silly. Though it does capture some of the spirit of the character at least. He does look like an asshole, and if he didn't, man, I'd throw a riot. So them letting him have this shit-eating smirk that the Siege and Earthrise Starscreams should have probably had on release really helps. But this whole thing is too swooped, too detailed, and weirdest of all, too long. Dude, what is going on with your head? You trying to grow into a Beast Machine's Cheetor morph? So yeah, the robot mode is tolerable. That's the only way I can really describe this thing. It looks okay, enough like the character, though it is a lot less so than most of the Kingdom line. It's a little boring on the eyes, a little nondescript, and not as accurate as it should have been given Kingdom's MO. None of this is helped by how proud the backpack sits, just soaking up the space behind his head and destroying the silhouette of this figure. It's amazing just how much the backpack devours any interesting detail of this figure. Like, if you pop off the wings and then do the anime robo crotch thrust I hate so much, you can see just how much more interesting this figure could have looked. But would you believe that this is this guy's best feature? Actually, scratch that, because his accessories are giving the robot mode a run for its money. Just getting these out of the way, he's got these two elbow pieces, which I have no idea why they are separate pieces. Like, they don't have to come off for the transformation. These are on the shortest pegs I've ever seen. I guess you can use them as the world's crappiest little knives. Then he comes with the titular Golden Disc of the Golden Disc line, which is a completely unimproved copy of the one from the Kingdom arc. It still has the Sounds of Earth record molding on the back, when it should be just mirrored. I don't know how they fucked that up. And then you've got his gun, which is probably more accurate than he is. Outside of the plastic saving cuts, this does just look like the blaster he had in the show. It's a lot more distinct than most of the other weapons that Kingdom characters tend to get. But weirdly enough, it's not designed to play well with blast effects. As for posability, I'm not really going to get into that on this guy. I'll tell you about the parts that are different than the Air Razor, but otherwise they are the exact same figure with the same strengths and limitations. Really, the biggest difference between the two is that this has a limited ability to turn his head unlike Air Razor, and its tilt-up is vastly less as well. Using both ball joint and hinge, it can't even look up as far as the undoctored Air Razor head using only its ball joint. Outside that, the waist is extraordinarily limited by the tail, the ankles make it a nightmare to do anything, and the ab crunch is also less of an option because of how much you have to untransform him to use it. So yeah, it's still very well articulated in general, but it does fail in comparison to the mold it's based on. Transformation also fails in comparison. Air Razor was never a particularly fun conversion, being a bit simple and boring, but this is just that little bit clunkier, and it faux forms, making it just that little bit more aggravating. So yeah, terrible transformation. And now I get to feel real bad, because this beast mode wasn't designed by Hasbro employees, but an artist from the community who's just a fan of this stuff. And it's clear that he was saddled with some pretty serious limitations by Hasbro, so it feels incredibly unfair for someone like me who's an unforgiving critic to judge it. But this is just fucking terrible. Oh my god, did this turn out badly. It's so structural and full of holes. The pegs on the back are way more apparent, and I don't know if mine is misassembled, but these parts here might have been switched because this is how it came, and man, can I not accept that as looking as intended. The dino head never looks like it's connected to the way too fat body. To be fair, that is absolutely not the fault of the sculpt, but of the design the artist was saddled with, and I do have to give it credit, the head is better looking than in the photographs. It is not what the character looked like, but the artist made it clear that that was something that Hasbro wanted more than him. And then there is this gap where his spine is ripping open, plus all that paint that was helping the robot mode stand out is gone, so the figure is a dull sea of red, which despite being more attractive than it looked in pictures, still doesn't look good and is terribly boring in these quantities. I swear he looks like he's covered in sores. And then you get to this section here, and I've just never seen anything that looks quite like it. The sculpt of the beast mode literally stops and becomes a featureless bridge to the wings. Almost every other inch of this is textured, and you're telling me that you couldn't put bumps or wrinkles there? It's so off-puttingly ugly. This is just a hideous mode. And like I said, I feel bad saying that because this was designed by just a member of the community. A guy like any of us. I don't want to shit on some fan's work. I don't want to make the guy feel bad if he ever sees this video. He's not a professional in the industry. He didn't choose to be saddled with a figure so compromised by its nature as a retool. He didn't choose to have Hasbro give him such heavy limitations. It feels so very cruel and wrong to say what I'm saying. But the fact of the matter is, I'm going to tell you the way I see things, because otherwise I risk misleading you. And this hardly could have turned out worse. And the figure in general turned out like crap. It's Air Razor, but uglier and in every way inferior. Every aspect of this figure is compromised, except for the accessories, which are the only thing that turned out better than on the original figure. He is outdone by the crap he comes with. That is as harsh a truth as I can say. This is on the razor's edge of being okay, and I find it hard to tell you what you should do in this situation. Basically, everyone needs a Terrorsaur, but if that weren't the case, I'd say that you'd be making the best decision in passing it up. But at this point, the aftermarket prices people are charging for this are insane, and you shouldn't even consider it. Hell, if I paid $20 for this, I'd be mad. It might satisfy you for that price, but you already can't get it for that. So let this pass you by, unless they do a second run of this figure, and even then, I still say don't get it, but it won't ruin your day if you do. And that's not half what I have to say, but it's enough what I have to say. And I know, you know, what everyone else tells you to do at the end of these videos. So, if you liked what you saw here, please do that. And if you'd like to take it a step further, then please, share this video with any friend you think may be interested. I hope you all enjoyed listening to me waste your time.